Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm playing on the American server when I was at TwitchCon in San Diego, and I'm playing in the M26 Pershing, a vehicle that will always have a special place in my heart. I unlocked this tank back in 2011 or 2012, and it was very special to me because it was the first ever tank that I really felt like I started to play okay in. I got 1,000 average experience, something that I wouldn't really be too fussed about now, and if I didn't achieve, I would probably look as if I'm playing quite badly over a few hundred games. And that's because the Pershing is just so darn well-rounded. Now, why it became one of my favorites back then is because you didn't have a whole host of other medium tanks that kind of did what the Pershing does, or does now what the Pershing did, as I should say. There weren't the British medium tanks in the game. You didn't have a Progetto with its autoloader. You didn't have a Mutz even, and that went in even a few years ago, which kind of just could do everything that the Pershing could do, but do it just a little bit better, or at least with its premium flair. And the Pershing just so well-rounded, and it still is well-rounded, but as you can see in the title of the video, there's definitely been some serious power creep in the game. Now look, power creep is only natural in a game. It has to happen, because if you allow the game to stagnate, then nobody will have anything to grind for, and yet new vehicles do have to be just a little bit better, otherwise I think that nobody would bother to actually grind for them. That doesn't mean that you should leave the other vehicles hanging in the dust and not give them also a little bit of love when you add the new vehicles into the game eventually. And Wargaming, well, at least they were doing this towards the end of last year and also towards the earlier bit in this year. And I think one of the reasons why they haven't been continuing to buff some of the older tanks in the game is probably because they're still thinking about whether they want to change the way that ammunition works, change it so that premium rounds do less damage but still have the high penetration, or even if they're thinking about changing the way that high explosive rounds work, as they just mentioned in the 1.6.1 test notes, or should I say the patch notes, that they're planning to test it on a sandbox test server. If that happens, of course I'm going to let you know. But that just means as to why they haven't really been buffing a load of vehicles that probably need some love. I'm looking at you, German heavy tanks, right? Why the Tiger II is sitting in the position that it is still kind of beyond me, even though I still kind of like playing it, because again, that was my first ever tier 8 heavy tank, and it will always, like the Pershing, have a special place in my heart because of it. So the Pershing, as it stands in World of Tanks, you can still do very well in this, and you can still do very well in a variety of tier 8 medium tanks, because this tank just has no weaknesses. It's got a decent amount of armor, at least frontally, on its turret. It's got a gun with an okay amount of gun handling. Its accuracy is not great. Everything about this tank is just not great, but not terrible. And so what that means is that you can manage to outplay other specialist tanks. So for example, the light tank on the enemy team. I know that he's got no armor, so why not only expose my turret and try and take advantage of that? If I'm fighting against a tank destroyer, well, maybe the tank destroyer doesn't have a turret at all, and then I can lock down his tracks and be able to get alongside him. If I'm fighting against a heavy tank, well, sometimes it's that they've got poor DPM, although most heavy tanks in the game these days have got better DPM than this tank, as it's a very lowly 1756 base. But maybe what I can do is do a combination of locking down their tracks, just like we did to this ISU 152, and I'm thinking, can we get a double shot in here to lock the... I'm actually thinking about it. Shall I lock down the guy's tracks? But then I realize, wait, he's got 230 hit points. As long as I don't low roll, he's going to die anyway. But against a heavy tank, it's usually about using your mobility, or even that you have a slightly better rate of fire to fire 2 shots for every time they fire at you. And if you can do that, then you're going to be absolutely excelling. The Pershing is still one of my faves at tier 8, purely, well, when I say that, the Pershing is still one of my faves, purely because of the fact that I fell in love with it all those years ago. But one thing that this tank still does very well is 400 meters base view range. A lot of tier 8 medium tanks don't have 400 base. Hell, there are even some light tanks at high tier or even top tier like the T100 LT that don't have that 400 base view range. And that allows you, with coated optics, or even if you've got an exceptionally skilled crew, without and just using vents, to get up to a very decent view range. Oh no, IS-3A autoloader comes around the corner, but luckily for some reason he decides to shoot the T-54 Mod 1. Very happy about that. And great bait there. We lulled him into the path of the Jagdpanther 2. We lulled him into the path of the HWK, and the T-54 looked after us very well. But there's another IS-3A that we're going to have to deal with. It's not in a platoon with that IS-3A that we just vanquished. And I've realized we don't have a crossfire right now. The most stupid thing that I could do would be to just sit here. If I sit here, then it's all frontal engagement. What I want to do instead is to go back into the position that I was in, where until this Yak Panther arrived, we had no tanks who's going to push me up. That's nice of him. And now I can get cross shots. And that's what you should always be doing in your medium tanks, thinking about how you can create a crossfire with your team. And that crossfire is now taking all of the pressure off the T-54 Mod 1. This Yak Panther, I do feel like I'm getting in his way or he's getting in my way. I think it's just one of those awkward situations. When a tank destroyer is trying to work a position and he doesn't have a turret, it's very awkward for him to be able to not get in the way of medium tanks. But thankfully, it looks like the Yak Panther has actually found the position that he can go into over on this part of the slope using the Ripper pattern, or the Korean pattern, whatever you want to be calling it, position there to go hull down. And this is really what you just got to do in a well-rounded tank like this. You can go everywhere. You can do everything. You can use your mobility to be able to outflank the heavies. You can use your gun depression, 10 degrees, wonderful gun depression, to be able to outposition your opponents on a ridge line. And then hopefully your 400 meters view range is going to allow you to be able to spot tanks at the back, but that's not the case here. So you see that I blind fire thinking, okay, what is it that's likely to be there? Maybe it's the AMX CDA, he hasn't been spotted. Every other tank has been spotted apart from artillery, but the artillery's got so low view range he's not going to be able to spot me. So I ping the map, I tell my team to turn their attention towards the vehicles that are likely to be camping out at the back, even though we haven't spotted them. And even the wonderful 400 base meters view range that this tank has is not going to be able to pierce through bushes, because of that's how game mechanics work with the bushes inside World of Tanks. Alright, so now that I've told you why I enjoy the Pershing, and why also you can use such well-rounded vehicles like this to be able to outperform your opponents by trying to take advantage of the weaknesses of a specialist tank. Now I'm going to talk primarily more on the power creep. So yeah, when I do look at the statistics of the Pershing, let's just say it like this. Oh my god, how do I even miss that? How do I even miss the building there to be able to knock it down to then put some pressure on the Super Pershing below? But if I was to put the Pershing into the game now, or let's say that I was going to go and review the Pershing as it stands now, I would look at the statistics and I would question why it's got bad penetration, why its gun handling, it's good, but why it's not the best, why has it got 0.37 accuracy, why is its aim time 2.3 seconds to be able to make up for this, why is its mobility not crazy, it's got a 16 power to weight ratio, why has it got a big hull that's incredibly weak with only 100 millimeters of frontal hull armor. I would look at it and I would think that this tank is just not very good. But nevertheless, irrelevant of a tank statistics, you can still do well in your vehicles as long as you get them into the right situation and you manage to do the right things with them, and you try to use the advantages that the tank has against your opponents. Or in the case of the Pershing, which has no advantages, everything is kind of mediocre. Take advantage of the disadvantages that your opponents have, or shall I say, their weaknesses. And if you can do that, then yeah, you can definitely still have fun in vehicles like this, even in your all-tier matchups like we had inside this battle. And sure, while the Pershing is definitely not as good respectively, or shall I say, in relation to all of the other vehicles in the game, as to when I fell in love with the tank all those years ago. There's still no reason why, as long as you don't expect to have the best results all the time, and you really just deal with what you have, you can't still do well in the tank. Now, irrelevant of that, there's still no excuse for vehicles to be underpowered compared to all of the other tanks at their tier. And that's something that I hope when Wargaming finally decide what they want to do with the ammunition rebalance, that they start to go and look down some of the more popular tech trees in the game, or even just look at the British light tanks right now and try and do something about them. Because yeah, there's no excuse for vehicles to just be completely underpowered. But also, power creep is a necessary evil, but if it didn't happen, I really don't think we'd see the player base still as involved in this game, gosh, 8-9 years after its release. And I can sometimes imagine that Wargaming are probably there trying to like juggle to try and get the balance quite right. Okay, we've got to make these tanks better so people are going to be interested in them, or we've got to add new features which are novel to keep people interested in our game. But also, if we try and push the boundaries too much, then our players are going to feel that we're not allowing them to enjoy all of the tanks that they used to love in the first place. So as you might be seeing, despite not streaming for the longest time at TwitchCon, I did have a cracking run. We get ourselves a Confederate medal, a high caliber medal, 1,702 base, not quite as much as we managed in the T-54E2 video that I released on Thursday, but still, for a non-premium tank that arguably isn't the most competitive in the game right now, I was very happy with this. 5,000 damage dealt, 2,000 damage upon detecting, and while I did resupply some consumables at full price, I didn't really feel like I fired too many premium rounds here. And I don't think the performance of using a small repair kit or a small med kit, considering that this wasn't even my account, it was a test account where I was only using those premium consumables, would have really made too much of a difference. And so the Pershing, while there's no doubt that it's not the most competitive tier 8 medium tank right now, I wouldn't want to play this tank in a one-on-one duel if my life depended on it. You can still make it work, and quite often it's just about lowering your expectations. And if you lower your expectations in vehicles that you have to try and grind through, you can have more fun with the smaller victories. And if you can have more fun with the smaller victories, then I think that positive attitude is probably going to propel you to play better. One thing that I found recently while I've been playing on my main account is that I've maybe been setting my expectations too high for every single battle, which can end up with me feeling very frustrated. And then that feeling of frustration just leads to worse and worse plays. So some tanks, they're just not going to be meta. And I would thoroughly recommend, for those of you out there who are trying to grind through them, I know it's frustrating as hell, but do everything that you can to try and remain as level-headed as possible. Even vehicles like this, as long as you try and go and do a review on the statistics and take a look at what possible opportunities you have to exploit, you're still going to be able to get through them. Alright, so ladies and gents, boys and girls, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give the video a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about power creep in World of Tanks. Do you think that it's something that should be avoided at all costs, or do you think that it's something that's necessary to keep people interested in the title after all these years? And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And it looks like all of you want to see Swedish tank destroyers. So come along right now. I'm going to be showcasing the entirety of the Swedish tank destroyer tech tree so you can see if it's a line that's worth it, or alternatively, if you already have the tanks, maybe you can pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. I'm going to be playing the Stridsvagn 103B, which is the best sniper in World of Tanks, bar none. It is the best sniper in World of Tanks, so it's always a fun one, and it can go backwards nearly as fast as it can go forwards. Lots of opportunities here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby, and as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.